My life with Clara's family, the illustrious Harrisons, began with a document. Not a marriage license, filled with hopeful calligraphy, but a prenuptial agreement, its pages cold and clinical. I was a junior software developer then, earning just enough to cover the rent on our tiny apartment and dream of a future that felt perpetually out of reach. Clara was an art history student, a beautiful, kind soul who seemed blissfully unaware of the chasm between her world and mine. Her father, Richard Harrison, a man whose tailored suits probably cost more than my car, presented the prenup to me in his mahogany-paneled study. He didn't look at me as he spoke, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere over my shoulder, as if addressing an invisible, more worthy person. "It's a formality, Liam," he'd said, his voice a low rumble of condescension. "Clara is our only daughter. We must protect her interests. You understand." I understood perfectly. I was a risk, a potential liability. I had nothing but love and ambition, and in their world, those were currencies with no value. I signed it without protest. What did I have to lose? My collection of second-hand books and a fledgling piece of code I was building in my spare time? The prenup was an ironclad fortress around the Harrison fortune, ensuring that if our marriage failed, I would walk away with exactly what I came in with, nothing. Clara was mortified. "I'm so sorry, Liam. It's not me, it's them. They're just old-fashioned." I held her hand and smiled, a gesture that took more effort than I let on. "It's okay, Clara. I'm marrying you, not your family's bank account." But that was a naive sentiment. When you marry someone, you marry their world. And their world treated me like a ghost at the feast. Family dinners were a weekly exercise in humiliation. They were held at the Harrison estate, a sprawling mansion that made our apartment feel like a shoebox. Richard would hold court at the head of the table, discussing stock portfolios and corporate mergers. Clara's mother, Eleanor, a woman draped in pearls and quiet disdain, would ask me questions designed to highlight my insignificance. "Liam, dear," she'd chime, her voice like tinkling, broken glass. "Are you still working on that little computer project of yours? Is it like a game?" Clara's brother, Thomas, was the worst. He was the golden child, a man who had failed upwards his entire life on the back of his father's influence. He'd smirk at me from across the table, a glint of cruel amusement in his eyes. "Still driving that rust bucket, Liam?" he'd ask loudly. I saw it parked out front. Thought the gardener had left his car by mistake. The laughter that followed was always polite but sharp, each chuckle a tiny needle in my skin. I would try to engage, to talk about the complex algorithms I was developing for my project, an AI-driven data analysis tool I'd named Synapse. Their eyes would glaze over. Richard would cut me off to ask Thomas about his latest golf handicap. I learned to stay silent, to become a part of the wallpaper. I was Clara's strange, penniless husband, a temporary fixture they tolerated. Clara tried to defend me, but her protests were weak, like a kitten's meow in a thunderstorm. "Dad, be nice. Liam's work is very complicated." "Of course, dear," Richard would say, patting her hand, his dismissal of me absolute. The years passed like this. 5 of them. My love for Clara was the only anchor in a sea of contempt. But even that was beginning to strain. She loved her family, and their constant, subtle disapproval of me was a wedge being slowly driven between us. She wanted me to try harder to fit in, to get a real job at one of her father's companies. I refused. Synapse was more than a project, it was my rebellion. Late at night, long after Clara was asleep, I would be at my desk, the glow of the monitor illuminating my face. The world of code was my sanctuary. There, I wasn't the poor son-in-law. I was a creator, an architect. I poured all my frustration, my anger, and my hope into those lines of code. I worked through weekends, holidays, and family insults. Synapse grew, becoming more powerful, more sophisticated. I secured a small seed funding from an angel investor who saw its potential, a fact the Harrisons dismissed as me playing with monopoly money. They didn't see the 18-hour days. They didn't see the endless rejections from venture capitalists before that one yes. They didn't see the sacrifices, the missed moments with Clara, the constant gnawing fear of failure. They only saw what they wanted to see, the nobody who had married into their family. The prenup was their shield, and my perceived failure was their justification for it. They had made their calculations and written me off. But they had miscalculated. Badly. Because in the 5th year of my marriage, after thousands of hours of relentless work, Synapse didn't just get noticed. It exploded. The turning point wasn't a single event, but a rapid cascade. It started when a major tech publication ran a feature on emerging AI startups. Synapse was front and center. The article called my algorithm revolutionary and a potential paradigm shift in data analytics. My phone, usually silent save for messages from Clara, began to buzz incessantly. The first call I took was from a prestigious venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. They weren't just interested, they were aggressive. Within a week, I was flown out to California, presenting Synapse in boardrooms that made Richard Harrison's study look quaint. They didn't see a poor son-in-law, they saw innovation and profit. They saw the future. They offered me a series of funding round of $50 million. I was stunned. It was a figure so astronomical it felt like a dream. When I told Clara, she burst into tears of joy. "We're rich, Liam. We're rich. They'll have to respect you now." Her words, meant to be comforting, left a bitter taste in my mouth. Respect shouldn't have a price tag. The news of the funding round was public. And just as Clara predicted, the shift from the Harrisons was immediate and nauseating. The first call was from Richard. His tone was different, a forced, syrupy warmth that felt utterly alien. "Liam, my boy," he boomed. "Heard the news? Astounding. I always knew you had it in you. A real visionary. We must have you and Clara over for dinner to celebrate. Your mother-in-law is so proud." At that dinner, the atmosphere was surreal. The disdain was gone, replaced by a fawning, suffocating attention. Richard, who once couldn't be bothered to understand what I did, was now asking detailed questions about market capitalization and burn rates. He dropped my name into conversation with a proprietary air, as if he had personally mentored me. "My son-in-law, Liam," he'd say to his friends on the phone. "The brains behind Synapse. Yes, a remarkable young man." Eleanor, who once mocked my little project, now touched my arm with a feigned maternal affection. "Liam, dear, you must be exhausted. You work so hard. We're just so terribly proud of the man our Clara chose." Thomas was the most transparent. His sneering contempt had been replaced by a greedy, calculating curiosity. He tried to act casual, buddy-buddy, but his eyes were fixed on me like a predator sizing up its prey. "So, 50 mil, huh," he said, clapping me on the back a little too hard. "That's some serious cash. You should let me and Dad help you invest it. We know how to make money work for you." I smiled politely, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. They weren't proud of me. They were proud of my success. They weren't celebrating me, they were calculating their proximity to my newfound wealth. It was a grotesque performance, and I was the unwilling star. Clara, however, was in heaven. She saw their acceptance as a victory. For her, the years of awkwardness were finally over. Her two worlds, her husband and her family, were finally merging. She didn't seem to notice the transactional nature of it all. She was just happy. "Isn't this wonderful?" she'd whisper to me during these dinners. "They finally see you for who you are." "No, Clara," I thought to myself. "They see me for what I have." The real earthquake came 6 months later. My company didn't just grow, it became a titan. A tech giant, one of the largest in the world, saw Synapse not as a partner, but as a vital acquisition. They wanted to integrate my AI into their global cloud infrastructure. The negotiations were swift and aggressive. The final offer was staggering. They bought my company for $1.2 billion. After taxes, stock options for my early employees, and other obligations, my personal net worth became just over $800 million. The news broke on a Tuesday. I was no longer just a successful startup founder. I was one of the new titans of the tech industry. My face was on the cover of business magazines. My life had been irrevocably altered. That evening, as Clara and I sat in stunned silence in our now ridiculously modest apartment, the phone rang. It was Richard. The fawning of the last 6 months was gone, replaced by a tone of grave, paternal seriousness. "Liam," he said, his voice low and firm. "We need to talk. As a family. There is the matter of that old, silly prenuptial agreement. Now that your circumstances have changed, it is an insult to my daughter. It's time we made things right." The game had changed again. The fawning was over. The hunt had begun. And the prenup, the document that once symbolized my worthlessness, was now the only thing standing between my fortune and their greed. Life became a whirlwind of curated affection. The Harrisons, once gatekeepers who barely let me in, now tried to build a golden cage around me. My newfound wealth was not just a source of pride for them, it was a resource to be managed, a territory to be claimed. Eleanor, who once wouldn't deign to visit our apartment, was now a constant presence, armed with brochures for sprawling estates in their exclusive neighborhood. "A man of your stature needs a home that reflects his success, Liam," she'd say, her eyes scanning our living room with renewed disdain. "And Clara deserves a proper home, don't you think? Near family." Richard appointed himself my unofficial financial advisor. He'd call at all hours, pitching can't-miss investment opportunities, which were usually failing businesses owned by his country club friends. He spoke of our portfolio and our financial future, seamlessly weaving my fortune into the family's tapestry of wealth as if it had always been part of the design. "This real estate venture in the Bahamas, Liam, is perfect for us," he'd say. "A family investment. A legacy." Thomas, meanwhile, saw me as his personal ATM. He'd casually mention his credit card debt or his desire for a new sports car, always with a jovial laugh, as if we were brothers sharing a secret. "You know how it is," he'd chuckle. "Easy come, easy go. Good thing you're here to bail me out, bro?" I politely deflected their advances, keeping my finances firewalled behind a team of professional lawyers and accountants I'd hired. My noncommittal responses were met with forced smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. They were probing for weakness, for an opening. And that opening was Clara. She was their primary tool, their willing but unwitting accomplice. She was swept up in the glamour of it all. She loved the new respect I was shown, the way her father now hung on my every word. She saw their sudden interest not as greed, but as love finally expressed. The subject of the prenup became a constant, insidious whisper in her ear. "It's a matter of principle, darling," Eleanor would tell her over lunch. "For your husband to keep that document in place, well, it implies he doesn't see you as a true partner. It's an insult to you. A man who truly loves his wife wouldn't need a document to separate his wealth from hers," Richard would pontificate to her. "Family is about trust. The prenup is the opposite of trust." Slowly but surely, their poison worked its way into her mind. The prenup, which she had once apologized for, now became a source of personal offense to her. She started to see it through their eyes, as a symbol of my distrust. The conversation I had been dreading finally happened one evening. We were in our new, much larger apartment, a concession I'd made to her happiness. She sat across from me, her expression uncharacteristically serious. "Liam," she began, twisting a ring on her finger. "We need to talk about the prenup." I kept my voice even. "What about it, Clara?" "It's embarrassing. My father is right. It's a relic from another time, from when, well, from before. Keeping it now, it feels like you're holding something over me. Like you don't trust me. Like we're not a real team." I looked at her, searching for the woman I had married, the one who saw me and not the numbers in my bank account. I saw flashes of her, but she was clouded by her family's influence. "Clara, that prenup was never about trusting you," I explained, trying to be patient. "It was about your family not trusting me. It was their document, their terms. Has it occurred to you that the only people who care about it are the ones who insisted on it in the first place? And they only started caring once I had something they wanted. She flinched as if I'd struck her. That's a horrible thing to say. They love me, and they're just looking out for my interests. They're happy for us. Are they? I asked quietly. Or are they happy for my success? There's a difference. The argument escalated. Tears streamed down her face. Why are you being so difficult? It's just a piece of paper. If you love me, you'll tear it up. It's that simple. It would prove to them, and to me, that you're truly part of this family. That was the line that broke something in me. Prove that I was part of the family. After 5 years of being treated like dirt, my entry fee was now my entire fortune. The love and loyalty I had given freely for years meant nothing. My worth was still being calculated, only the numbers on the spreadsheet had changed. I realized I was trapped. If I refused, I was the untrusting, selfish husband who was alienating my wife. If I agreed, I was a fool, handing over the fruits of my entire life's work to a family of vultures who had shown me nothing but contempt. They had backed me into a corner, using my love for my wife as their weapon. The golden cage had slammed shut, and Clara was the one holding the key, asking me to throw it away. The pressure became unbearable. It was a coordinated campaign, executed with chilling precision. Clara grew distant, her conversations with me strained and punctuated by long, accusatory silences. She was in constant contact with her parents, and I could feel their influence in every word she spoke. The battle for my fortune was being waged in the heart of my marriage. Finally, Richard decided it was time to end the subtlety. He called me one afternoon. Liam. Be at my house tonight. 8 o'clock. My study. We're going to resolve this once and for all. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. When I arrived, the entire Harrison clan was there. Richard sat behind his large desk, a posture of judicial authority. Eleanor was on the sofa, looking stern and disappointed. Thomas stood by the fireplace, smirking, sensing victory. And Clara. Clara sat beside her mother, refusing to meet my eyes. It was an ambush. An inquisition. Richard began without preamble. Liam, this situation has become untenable. Your refusal to dissolve the prenuptial agreement is causing a great deal of pain to my daughter and is frankly a grave insult to this family. I remained silent, letting him play his hand. When you had nothing, he continued, steepling his fingers, the document was a necessary precaution. We accept that. But now, you are a man of immense means. To maintain this barrier between you and your wife is to declare that she is not your equal partner. It suggests you believe she is only with you for your money, a grotesque insinuation, considering she was with you when you were a nobody. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. He was using Clara's past loyalty to me as a weapon to justify their present greed. Eleanor chimed in, her voice dripping with manipulative sorrow. We just want what's best for Clara, Liam. We want her to feel secure. To feel loved. Can't you see how much this is hurting her? Thomas scoffed. It's about respect, man. Something you clearly don't have for my sister. Or maybe you're just selfish. You finally get a taste of real money and you want to hoard it all for yourself. They hammered at me, a three-pronged assault of logic, emotion, and insult. Through it all, I watched Clara. She just sat there, a silent, miserable puppet. She believed them. She truly believed that this was about her honor and my lack of trust. Finally, Richard delivered the ultimatum. So, here it is. You will have your lawyer contact ours tomorrow morning and begin the process of dissolving the prenup. No more delays. No more discussion. You do this, or you will force Clara to make a choice between her husband and her family. And I promise you, that is not a choice you want her to make. It was a declaration of war. They were threatening to destroy my marriage if I didn't comply. I looked at Clara, my heart aching. Clara? Is this what you want? She finally looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "I just want this to be over, Liam. I want us to be a family. Why is that so hard for you to understand?" In that moment, I understood everything. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about whether my marriage was built on a foundation of love or a transaction. For years, I was the transaction that wasn't worth their time. Now, I was a prize they were determined to claim, and they had turned my own wife against me to do it. A strange calm washed over me. The anger and hurt receded, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I had been playing defense, reacting to their moves. It was time to make my own. I stood up. "I understand," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You've made your position very clear. I need some time to think. I will give you my final answer tomorrow." I walked out of the study, out of the house, and into the cold night air. I didn't know if my marriage was salvageable. I didn't know if Clara would ever see the truth. But I knew one thing for certain: I would not be bullied. I would not be controlled. And I would not surrender. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel and called my lead counsel, a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer named Ms. Sterling. I laid out the entire situation, from the first dinner to the ultimatum. I didn't just want to protect my assets. I wanted to end this. Permanently. We talked for hours, brainstorming, strategizing. And by dawn, we had a plan. It wasn't a defensive move. It was an offensive one. It was a single, precise move designed to expose them, to disarm them, and to leave them utterly and completely powerless. The next morning, I called Richard. "I've made my decision," I said. "I have a proposal that I think you'll find more than fair. Let's meet tonight. Your house. The whole family. I'll bring the paperwork." I could hear the smug satisfaction in his voice. "Excellent, Liam. I knew you'd see reason." He thought he had one. He had no idea he was walking into a trap of his own making. I walked into the Harrisons' study that evening feeling like a man walking into a duel he knew he would win. The atmosphere was thick with triumphant expectation. Richard was sitting behind his desk, looking regal. Eleanor was smiling, a genuine, predatory smile this time. Thomas was practically vibrating with excitement, likely already spending my money in his head. And Clara was there, looking relieved. She gave me a small, hopeful smile, believing I had finally caved, that our ordeal was over. Her relief pained me more than their greed. I wasn't carrying a document to dissolve the prenup. I was carrying a single, elegantly bound folder. I placed it on the polished surface of Richard's desk. "You wanted a resolution," I began, my voice calm and steady, commanding the room. "You're right. The old prenup, signed when I had nothing, doesn't reflect our current reality. It was a document born from your distrust of me. So, I agree. It's time for a new arrangement. One built on the trust you all claim to value so highly." Richard leaned forward, a greedy glint in his eye. "I'm glad you've come to your senses, son." "So, I had my legal team draft a new agreement," I continued, opening the folder. "It's not a dissolution. It's a replacement. I call it the Harrison Family Trust and Postnuptial Agreement. I saw a flicker of confusion on their faces. This wasn't what they expected. "Let me explain the terms," I said, my voice turning steely. "The agreement has two main parts. Part one is that the original prenup is, in fact, rendered null and void." A wave of relief washed over them. Thomas grinned. Richard sat back, satisfied. "However," I said, letting the word hang in the air, "it is replaced by this new, binding postnuptial agreement. Under this agreement, I will immediately place $200 million, 25% of my liquid net worth, into an irrevocable trust." The amount was so staggering it sucked the air out of the room. Thomas's jaw dropped. "This trust," I continued, looking directly at Clara, "is named the Clara Harrison Trust. You, Clara, will be the sole primary beneficiary. You will have access to the interest and dividends for your personal use, ensuring you are independently wealthy for the rest of your life. The principal is protected for you and for our future children. It is your security, your legacy, completely independent of me. Clara looked at me, her eyes wide with shock and a dawning gratitude. Liam. Richard was beaming. My boy. That is an incredibly generous gesture. A true family man. I'm not finished, I said, my voice cutting through his praise like a razor. This is where the trust part comes in. The trust will be managed by a neutral, third-party financial firm of my choosing. They will have a fiduciary duty to act only in the best interests of the beneficiary, Clara. They will answer to no one else. I paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. And here is the most important clause. The one you all must sign tonight. The agreement stipulates that you, Richard, Eleanor, and Thomas Harrison, will have zero control, zero influence, and zero legal standing to advise, direct, or contest the management of this trust. Ever. Their smiles vanished. The triumphant atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a stunned, chilling silence. But I wasn't done. This was my one move. My checkmate. Furthermore, I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper, the agreement contains a poison pill clause. It states that if any signatory, that means any of you three, attempts to exert undue influence on Clara regarding the trust's funds, or if you attempt any legal action to challenge the trust's management or its terms, the entire $200 million principal will be immediately and irrevocably liquidated and donated to a list of charities dedicated to helping the underprivileged. You will not see a single cent. You will, in fact, be responsible for taking all of that security away from Clara forever. Silence. Dead, absolute silence. I looked at them, one by one. Their faces were masks of pure shock and dawning horror. I had not just protected my money, I had used their own greed to build Clara a fortress they could never penetrate. I had called their bluff on a colossal scale. If they truly cared about Clara's security, they would sign it in a heartbeat. It gave her more wealth and protection than she could ever dream of. But if this was ever about their own access and control, they couldn't possibly sign it. Signing it would be admitting defeat. Not signing it would be admitting their true intentions. Thomas was the first to break. His face was purple with rage. This is a trick. A trap, he sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at me. You're cutting us out. After everything we've done for you. Done for me? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. What exactly have you done for me, Thomas? Besides mock me, belittle me, and try to get your hands on my money? Eleanor looked pale, speechless. Richard stared at the document on his desk as if it were a venomous snake. He saw it. He saw the checkmate. He had no moves left. Any path he chose would expose him for what he was. His face, usually a mask of smug control, was slack with impotent fury. But the most important reaction was Clara's. As she listened to Thomas's outburst and saw the naked greed and fury on her parents' faces, it was like a spell had been broken. For the first time, she wasn't seeing loving parents concerned for her welfare. She was seeing exactly what I saw. Vultures. She looked from their twisted faces to mine, and in her eyes, I saw a profound, heartbreaking understanding. The illusion of her perfect family had shattered. I stood up and pushed the document towards the center of the desk. The choice is yours, I said to all of them. Sign the paper and secure Clara's future beyond your wildest dreams. Or refuse, and prove that this was never about her at all. It was always about you. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them there in their self-made prison of silence and powerlessness. I didn't know if my marriage would survive the truth I had just unearthed. But as I stepped into the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer the nobody in their story. I was the author of my own. And I was finally free.